Kelly, welcome on the show today. I'm really excited to get into branding and identity building and you as a person.
I love this. It was all our conversations over Instagram, and now we're here. So I'm so pleased it's worked.
I know. I'm so glad. I think we were in touch. It must be, I don't know how long ago, but
Yeah, but it's like, okay, we want to get you come on. Then I was traveling, and then you check back in, and anyway, we're here. We're here to share some value.
I know. So I just want to kind of go delve into your childhood already. I'm like, I want to be the therapist on the show here.
Love
and
it.
I just want to paint a picture of who you were as a person from the little Kelly.
Yeah. Someone who talked a lot.
Yeah.
Which is quite funny now. I would always be the one that would get the report card, and it's like, Kelly is the class chatterbox, and it's nice now that I actually get paid to speak, so I don't think it's such a bad thing. But I'm originally from Edinburgh, and I lived there for 18 years before I was ready to spread my wings and escape the Scottish weather. Like, people always say, why did you leave? And I'm like, Edinburgh is beautiful, I love it, but I don't love the weather, and I definitely more into warmer climates. And I remember having a moment, I don't know, maybe I was like 13, 14, thinking, is this it? Is this what life is about? The environment. And I thought there's got to be more to it. And at 18, I applied for a job as a holiday rep, and I think that kind of ticked the box of actually wanting to escape to the sunshine, but also just do something different, because I didn't have that little, when I was little, I want to be a doctor or a nurse, or I wanted to be everything. I think the one that stuck the most was probably being an actress or something like that. But I wanted to be so many things, so there was never anything that I wanted to study. I didn't go to university. And I think probably a part of shaping who you are is through my parents divorced when I was kind of 13, 14. That shapes kind of who you are. And I think that escalated independence more than maybe it would have. And the opportunity or the desire to want to live on my own and travel and do all of that thing. So I really think that pushed me into travel, and I've kind of never really gone back.
So how do you think the divorce impacted you as a little kid?
Yeah, I think there was definitely that independence. I think when Dad left, I very much kind of, as the older sibling, I've got a younger sister, kind of took over everything. And certainly then that was weird. I think the independence, and I think then it became just the girls. It was my mom and my sister and I for quite a while. And then I think then there was a new dynamic kind of into the mix with when my mom met someone, and things just changed. And I think that then escalated no, it's my time to go and do something else. And, throughout that time, I had a number of different jobs. I find it amazing now that my nephew's coming up for 16 and he's never had a job.
No way.
I know.
Yeah.
Whereas, certainly, I think I had my first job at 14. I think the laws have changed a lot since then. So independence, owning my own money, all of that sort of thing, I think's been around for a really long time, and that's just continued to grow.
How do you think the effect of like a divorce as a child has a ripple effect on your adulthood?
Yeah, I'm one divorce in, so I don't know if that affects it as well. But I think I think there's always things, I think, divorce or not, I think that there's always things that, your parents have said, or that that then become part of who you are until you're old enough, or until you've experienced it yourself, that you're like, no, that's not how it goes, or I don't want that for myself. I thought that's what I wanted, but it's actually not what I want. And certainly in choosing the man that, you're going to be with, if I knew what I know now at 29 when I went in to get married the first time, I would never have done it. But I think that was kind of maybe the hang-ups from kind of being younger, thinking this was how it should be. I want this in my life because I'd seen what my family had gone through. In actual fact, I should have just been me.
So you mentioned you got divorced, right?
Yeah.
How long ago was that?
7
I'm
years
gonna
ago.
I'm gonna tell your age now.
Yeah, totally. I think 7 years ago now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you think if your parents didn't get divorced, would that have happened?
I probably wouldn't have married or been in that situation anyway. I don't know. I mean, you can never change them.
I know
You can
you
never
can't change
kind
your
of go,
past,
okay,
yeah.
I would never do that. But yeah, it's really hard. Would they have? I could have maybe got married earlier. I don't know. My parents married at 21. And, I think now, this is just my opinion, but I would always say wait till you're after 30. Till you get married.
Yeah.
I think, that would kind of be, but that I didn't get married second time around until I was 43. But I feel so sure and so right, and I'm so me, and it's just effortless. So I do, maybe there's no right time, but I would say you're just finding out who you are in your 20s.
So what did marriage mean for you back then?
It's a great question. What did marriage mean for me? I think there was a huge part of security. I think there was, doing things together was a big part of what I wanted to do. But then when you actually realize you don't want to do those things together, then you're like, okay, we've got a problem here. I would say that there would be elements of, what else did marriage mean? Kind of just, I thought it was growing as a couple, but I do think that unless you go together, you end up growing the other part, and that was very much, it went that way.
And what does marriage mean for you now?
Oh, it's that word, it's effortless. Like it's whether it's living together, or it's friendship. I think values is the one thing I don't think I realised. That if you don't have the same values, it doesn't matter what you like, what you don't like, eventually it's going to break down. And, before I didn't have the same values. We've got the same values now. And I think that's a huge part of the effortlessness. There's no friction in that. And I think there is no desire or need to be like, oh, you're my best friend. It's like, no, we have a great time together. I really appreciate him as my husband. And I remember seeing something, I'm trying to remember now. She's a very famous relationship coach, and her name will come to me. And I remember hearing a podcast that she was talking about that we cannot expect our spouse to be everything. We cannot expect them to be our best friend. We cannot expect them to be our spouse. We cannot expect them to be our sexual desire. We can't expect them to be this, this, and this, and this. They can't be everything to you. And I think that was a real reflection now going, they don't need to have your best friends for this.
Yeah.
Your husband or your wife can be your best friend, but not in the same way, you can want to do things. And I think for me, it's about having an effortless relationship, and we communicate so much because we were long distance. Our communication has always been really good.
Long distance?
For 4 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So where did you meet him?
So we were originally both from the same, we actually went to the same school together. So we're originally from Edinburgh.
Do you believe that that's a coincidence?
I don't
do you
think
think it's
anything's a
fate?
coincidence. I think it was all meant. But interestingly, we have talked about if we had got together when we had our high school kiss at prom, and say we'd stayed together.
You did?
Well, yeah.
You can.
How much time do we have? He's like, oh my God, you've gone into that story again. So we went to school together. So I've known him since we were 12. And there was always a bit of a kind of crush that I had on him, but he was very shy. And at high school prom, I asked for a picture, and I one day wanted to show my children who my high school crush had been. And we danced at school prom, and we had a cheeky kiss, and then I never saw him again because I left the UK. And 21 years later, my mum put me on Bumble in Edinburgh and was like, I think you should meet
Your
someone.
mum?
Yeah. And she was like, I think you should meet someone. I'll manage your account for you and I'll do it all for you. Yeah. And she was like, I think you should put this picture on and I think you should say this and do this. So we sat and had wine and had a really fun afternoon. And one of the people that we swiped on was my now husband. And I was like, oh, Mum, I said, I went to school with him. I said, I totally had a crush on him. I said, we kissed at high school prom. She was like, oh, that's nice, swiping him. Anyway, we had a bit of a conversation back and forward. And I remember he said to me, I said, oh, my mum and I are on Bumble. And he's like, I said, my mum's doing Bumble or something like that. And he was like, oh, so is it your mum that's wants to go on the date or you? And I was like, no, it's me. It's my pictures. And yeah, so then we went on a date and it was brilliant. And he was like, well, when am I going to get to see you again? And I was like, well, I live in Dubai, so do you want to come to Dubai? And he was like, well, message me in the morning and give me some dates and I'll book a flight. And I was like, that's when he's going to do that. Next morning, he was like, how are you doing? Would you, if you're still up for it, I'd love to come to Dubai and see you. When works? And I was like, well, when's too soon? How do you keep the momentum going? And so we agreed, was it 3 or 4 weekends later, he flew to Dubai. And we had our first weekend here. And yeah, it was, everyone was like, well, he's coming to stay with you. What if you don't? I said, I've known him like from high school. If there's no chemistry, which there totally was because we kissed that night and got into the taxi, kissed me goodbye. And it was just the butterflies that I had when I was at high school. But I just thought that only happens because it's at high school. And it doesn't. It happens when you're an adult as well. So COVID didn't help with COVID doesn't help with long distance because we had 6 months apart, 5 months apart, and he moved here 18 months ago, and we got married this year, and
there's hope. There's hope.
Absolutely. I think I should get my mum to start a business on helping people do their Bumble accounts.
You do the branding for.
Exactly.
So, do you know what? I've had a weird experience when it comes to dating apps because previously, before I was on dating apps, and I came up with this analogy now where I feel like dating apps sometimes gives you the false perception that you're actually making an act of effort to go and date. When you're swiping, you feel like you're making an effort, and then you fill your basket up as if it's like a shopping basket. You swipe.
Unas, got a large basket there.
and you don't proceed to checkout a lot of the time. So you don't actually make that effort, but subconsciously you feel like you're making that effort, but you're not really. Yeah. So I've come up with the idea that I was like, right, I'm not using any dating apps, so I need to make the conscious effort to actually engage with people in person.
Yeah.
Has it been effective? Not yet, but that was my idea. I used to think dating apps were amazing, and I don't know.
Was great on the communication. Yeah. Like she did all the communicating to begin with everyone. As me. I don't know if that's against the law or what, but she did it as me, and it's quite funny. I haven't told the story on a podcast.
But here we are.
But one of these... so it was the app that I had Bumble on was the iPad. So the iPad I just left at home. It wasn't like my phone was... She had my phone or anything. And so when I went out that night to meet my friend in Edinburgh, and I left her with a dating app, and she was having fun and chatting to people. She really engages. She really asks questions. She's brilliant at writing, but it was all my life. So she got into this conversation with a pilot who, was saying, oh, years ago, I used to fly as well, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, a couple of days later, I picked up the iPad and was like, I'm going to go and check in on Bumble. And I hadn't gone on my date yet with my now husband. So I was like, still checking to see what was going on. And I started up a conversation again with someone that Mum, had been having the conversation. Anyway, he messaged back after a couple of bits. And he said, are you all right? And I was like, yeah, I'm great. And he's like, oh, you're just not as funny as you were over the weekend. And I was like, oh, that's my mum.
Oh, no way. Oh my God. Yeah, I'll hire your mum. Maybe I'll get back on.
I'm telling you, I can get her a job. But yeah.
So to come back to Emirates, what was flying like for you and being here in the UAE working for Emirates?
Loved it. Oh, I think it's the best job in the world.
Yeah.
Honestly, at 21, when you don't know what you want to do, and I am not a backpacker, so the way for me to see the world at 21, 22 was to do it in a slightly nicer way through ID90s, through ID50s. I don't know if they're still called that now, and layovers. You know, we used to get some really lovely layovers in the old days, shall we say.
For the listener, ID90 means 90% off flights.
The pain when I left that opportunity of having cheap tickets and paying for a full fare. Like, it was horrible. People pay for this? Oh my God, I can only go on holiday once a year, you know? Because I flew to Hawaii for, $100, like nothing.
Where was the most memorable destination that you went to?
There's been so many. Like, Hawaii was great because it was a big tick off the list, and I was thinking, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. Will I ever get here again? It was so far. I went via Japan to get to it. That was a great holiday. Seychelles has been one of my favourite, and I've gone back since, and it's where we got married, so it holds a really special place in my heart. South Africa I've loved. There's been so many. And I think the big piece is what my lifestyle has also allowed is, as much as I don't get to see my family as often as if I was living in the same city, it's given us opportunities that we would never have had. We've travelled together. We've done things together that we would never have done if I hadn't lived here, or if I hadn't had, cheap tickets in the day, or just the desire to want to travel.
What was the biggest lesson that you learned during your stages with Emirates?
In those days, I would say attention to detail with service. That's a big thing. Grooming, like all of those. Now what I talk about in personal branding, it's the small things that make the big difference. And I think that's one thing that Emirates in its day was so good about. So good that I kind of get on now, and I'm like, where's the silver tray? They don't have the silver tray in economy anymore. And I'm like, there was so much about the detail and the service and everything that I have taken into. I actually did a post about it. I think it was 10 things that being cabin crew taught me about building a personal brand. So there was a lot. Great
post, because I don't know about you, but do you ever feel like when you're on a flight you want to get up and start working?
Oh yeah, I'm always watching.
So am I.
Yeah,
I'm like
always.
a hawk.
Like, I wouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah.
You're doing that? Oh, I would have served that passenger like that. Yeah.
So I want you to just take me on a journey of what happened after Emirates.
So at the time, I think maybe to put things into perspective, so that was around 2003, 2004, 2005. And Dubai at that time was exploding. I mean, people think Dubai is exploding now. No, in 2005, 4, 3, the city was this energy, and I do believe to an extent it does, that anything is possible. You want to go and do something, you want to go and buy property, you're only 23 years old, go and do it. You want to start a business? Wow, that's amazing. Like, there was so much of that I'd never experienced before, that I kind of was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And the more that I chatted to other crew members, whether it was flight deck, whether it was cabin crew, they've all got a side hustle, or their spouses are doing a business. And I'm thinking, I want to be part of this. Like, how do I start a business? And I think that was probably where the seed was planted. And I have always loved fashion. I think from a really early age, my mum used to make our clothes. At the weekend, she would take us to... There's a fabric shop in Edinburgh called Remnant Kings. I don't know if anyone's listening that will ever remember that. And she used to let us pick our own fabric. And she would always say at the till point, are you sure you want that? And we were like, yes, we'd like that. And of course, now I look back at some of the outfits and I'm thinking, oh my God, but she made them, handmade them all for our holidays and stuff. So I'd always loved fashion, but I didn't necessarily want to work in a shop. There was always that calling for more. I didn't just want to be limited to one brand or one designer. And that's when I came up with the idea to launch what was then the Middle East's first personal shopping and styling service. And I was very naive, which I think when you're young, you are. And there was, how hard can it be to earn a salary? This is what I get with Emirates. It's like, really, it can't be that hard to match that. It is. But yeah, I left crew with a massive loan because I was so determined to set up this business. I didn't have savings. I mean, you know what you got paid as Emirates. Okay, your lifestyle is covered in terms of house and stuff, but it's not massive. Those days, it wasn't massive salaries. And I took a loan because at the time, I needed to get a trade license. And in order to get a trade license, this is how much things have evolved since then, you needed to have 100,000 dirhams in your bank account before they would give you the piece of paper that said you're 100% shareholder.
Yeah.
And I was like, 100,000? Like, even if I worked for the whole year, I'd never make that money with Emirates. I'd not spend a penny. So I took a loan from the bank and because you could put it in. And then I remember the man telling me, you can take it out the next day. And I'm like, I don't know anyone who's got 100,000 dirhams. My friends were all 20. No one had that. And that's when I took the loan. And when the bank manager said to me, I took it as a car loan. And the bank manager said to me, well, this is quite a lot of money for you. What kind of car are you buying? And I had no idea what to say. And I had remembered walking to the bank. I had seen in a little advert that someone
in HQ.
No, this was on Shakeside Road, up the stairs. And I remember seeing in one of the little shops that someone was selling a Porsche for 120,000 dirhams. And I'd seen that in the window. And the man was like, so what kind of car are you buying? And I was like, I'm buying a Porsche. And he said to me, oh, you've got great taste. And that was it. And the money went into my bank account. And that was how I started my styling business. And I paid a huge amount back because I didn't need that amount of money.
Yeah.
So I paid it back. So obviously the loan repayments came down and the interest and all of that kind of stuff. But yeah.
And how long did you have that business for?
15 years.
Oh, yeah, wow.
So I did that for 15 years, worked my way up, worked with some incredible people.
Okay.
And I think the huge thing that what I did was I helped people's confidence. Like styling was the tool, helping people with clothing actually brought them confidence. And when you're confident, you can take over the world. You can turn up at a baby shower and see your ex-husband and feel good. You can, go and do your next pitch at an event and win the pitch. And yeah, the clothing helps you do that, but it's the confidence piece that helps. So I loved it. I loved it.
Did you study fashion alongside this, or did you just?
No, I'd worked in fashion. I'd worked in retail. Before I had left Edinburgh, I had worked in retail. So it was just one of those things. And then I self-taught myself through everything.
What did you use to self-teach yourself?
In those days, what did I do? I'm trying to think what I would have done. Books. Trini and Susanna.
Yeah.
Yeah, which again, showing my age, but they were massive then. So I had every Trini and Susanna book. I watched every TV show that I could possibly get my hands on and experience. And I got a job in a department store sort of once a week, and there was volume. And then when you start doing something in volume, you quickly pick up, okay, that was right, that's not. And I could style people really quickly. And it's that kind of quote where you're not buying into how much time we're spending, you're buying into the level of experience that I've got. But it was during having the styling business that I realised it's not just a business, you are a personal brand. And it was about 4 years into the styling business where I got the opportunity to work with a luxury brand. And
which luxury brand is that?
Harvey Nichols.
Nice.
And when you're in fashion, you want to work with your premium brands. And when they contacted me to say, we'd love for you to host an event, I was like, oh, this is the pinnacle of my career. These kind of things are so big. And I think when you're an entrepreneur, it's really important to celebrate those kind of wins. And it was a paid opportunity. And the marketing department had said to me, please, can you send me your pictures, your logo, your bio, all of that. And I sent all of that. And they called me back and went, we can't use this. I was like, oh, what's wrong with it? And they were like, oh, well, it's your business. And I'm thinking, yeah, I am a business. And they're like, no, as a brand, and some we can only represent individuals. We can't be seen to be promoting other businesses. And to me at the time, I was like, oh, okay, that kind of makes sense. When you look around the designers, it's all a designer name that you're doing. You're not promoting another business. And I was like, that makes complete sense. And then and quite interestingly, it was around the time of my first book, and I was starting to go in and speak at different schools. And I was like, where do I talk about this, speaking about entrepreneurship and books? And, things weren't fitting into the styling hat, so to speak. So then after the Harvey Nichols conversation, I was like, no problem, can you give me sort of 2 days and I'll send you my logo? And I was quickly finding a graphic designer to go, right, I need a logo and I need a website and I need it in the next week. And that was kind of where Kelly Lundberg was born. And then I had my styling agency at the time, which was great because I always wanted to sell my business. And because I had a personal brand, that allowed me the flexibility to be able to do that. But more and more opportunities came because of Kelly, not because of the business. Media, can you come in the press? Can you do this? Can you do this? Can you come and speak here? And I also noticed it at the time with an Instagram page. I was pushing the styling business and pushing Kelly. Kelly was growing much quicker than the business was. And people want to do things with people rather than just a business.
What comes first, the business or the brand?
Personal brand, or what do you mean, or the brand identity?
Brand identity.
Well, I think it depends what business you're in, because I think for some people, they are very much their personal brand. Service-based industries, if you're the personal trainer or if you're the hairdresser, people are buying into you. It would be different if you're launching an app or if you're launching, you can't go to market with nothing. So you need some sort of collateral. But before you do that, you've got to work out, who am I? What am I doing? What message do I want to put out there? Am I all about being bright and inviting and engaging? Or, one of the rebrands actually I really enjoyed working on was a doctor, a former cardiac surgeon. And initially her color palette was very pastel, but she was very bold, very dynamic. And as part of her personal brand identity, we changed that into the identity of her personal brand being very bold because it matched the message that went with it and who she was as a person. Because as a personal brand, people say, well, what is a personal brand? And I believe it's how you make people feel when they come into contact with something you say or do. Now, that could be online and it can be offline. But you've got to give that feeling of what kind of person are you if you're going to be operating a personal brand.
If I'm someone who is very inviting and makes someone feel very comfortable within my presence, what kind of brand what kind of advice would you give me?
And when you're saying brand, do you mean brand identity in terms of color palette, or do you mean message, or do you mean, because I think people get a bit confused with that. So I think, what do you mean exactly by that?
So I would say, let's start with color palette.
Yeah. So I think, first of all, before you even get to color palette, I think there needs to be, who are you and what's your purpose? Because without that, and what do you like? Because I could say, oh, do you know what? These colors will be brilliant for you. And you go, I hate orange.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's got to be this bit of, okay, you got to tell me and talk to me. What's the goal? What's the vision? Okay, I see this, or I'd like to help people with this. Okay, are you looking for male or female clients? Is it unisex? No, I just want to work with women. Okay, so then suggesting shades like blue or kind of more masculine, it's not going to work for your personal brand. Are you looking for something that's unisex? So I did a rebrand at the start of 2024. For years, I had also been down that route of coming through fashion, very feminine. But my book was launching. I was doing a lot of corporate speaking, and my color palette and my identity of scripty writing, it just didn't match who this new version of Kelly was, with the book De-Seed the Lemon, with the 2.0 of the business. And I think also part and parcel of stepping into a new life personally was getting married. Like, I really wanted to have this new brand. So I think it's got to start with, who are you, and then what's the vision that you want to go, and what kind of things are you drawn to, because you attract your tribe.
Yeah.
I think there's that.
So when it comes to figuring out your identity, what's the main kind of questions you'd ask yourself?
In terms of like your personal brand identity.
Yeah.
One of the things that before you get stuck into, I just say, where do you see yourself in 3 years' time? Tell me, because people then relax, because then they're talking about themselves. And one exercise I love to get clients to do quite early on is to create their future bio. So everyone's heard of, doing a vision board and creating a desire statement, but I want you to write something that if I was to read it out on stage, because I'm introducing you, what does it say about you? And they're like, ooh, I've not thought about that. What kind of person? That's when you think maybe more than a professional way, what do I want to have accomplished? Do you want to be an author, or do you want to have a podcast with 10 million downloads, or do you want to have won awards, or do you want to have sold your business and you're doing whatever? And I think that exercise allows people to think big before you go, okay, well, who are you and what do you... I just love that exercise. And then also getting people to connect with their personal brand values. So that, I think, is a really big exercise where you need to understand, and you could pick 10, 12 personal brand values that are important to you, and you pick 3 or 4 that you want to be known for. And through that, then you can create content, you can finish your biography, because you want those words to come into your biography. So when I do keynotes or I do a workshop, we do a personal brand exercise, and then after that they've worked out what their personal brand values are. I will then share my biography, and I will ask them to pick my values out of the biography. But I've given someone in the audience an envelope with my top 5 in it, and then they have to tell everyone. So you can see where and how did these values shape who you are and the things that you say yes to and what it is that you do. And it's back to, how do you show up as a person, and how do you make people feel?
How did you figure out this framework?
Trial and error. But the actual framework of, but it is very much trial and error, but the actual brand you formula I talk about in the book is very much, I looked back, like reflection. What were the things that got me where I wanted to be? And I think that's an interesting piece where I see a lot of people that go, I'm a personal branding expert. Well, are you? What have you done? Okay, I'm actually a social media manager. So that's what I think people get a bit confused about, whereas I really believe I talk about personal branding from a place of building a personal brand. I've had a website since I was 19. So I think that, you learn through trial and error, and you've got to keep evolving because nothing stays the same. So you've got to be testing them out. So very much looked back at the reflection of, that defining moment of Harvey Nichols was a big thing for me. So what was the one thing I needed? Identity. I needed a name, I needed a website, I needed digital collaterals, I needed something that represented who I was so that they could promote me. And then I was like, okay, but before that, how and what do I want to be known for, and bring everything in? And then I was like, how did I get my TEDx talk? Well, speaking's a huge part of building your personal brand. Okay, it has a lot of media, the spotlight. It's not the business that gets the opportunities for the magazines and the journalist connections. That comes personally. And again, I learned through trial and error. When my first book came out in 2009, Grazia wanted to do a huge feature. And I was like, this is it. My book's going to sell millions of copies. That is not how it works. There's a compound effect. But anyway, they did this whole feature on me, and I made it really clear that the book wasn't about me. My story isn't even in the first book. And it was all about other entrepreneurs. It was called Success in the City. It was all about how Dubai had inspired me, and I had interviewed all these people's different stories. And when I picked up the copy of Grazia, they led with this title, and I was mortified. From air hostess to author. And I was like, oh my God, that's not what I said. But laterally, going through the whole branding thing, I had thought it was about other people, but press and journalists want the story. They want the story to connect, and that's why it's really important that storytelling is part of the brand journey. When you're going to people connect with stories and find out, and they resonate with you, and that's how magazines and newspapers sell, through storytelling. And if it was just about other people, it wouldn't have connected it. And I think back, no, they went with it. Do I like that title? No. And it's the one magazine I do not have as a, it's like I keep all my copies. And I don't have that one because I was so embarrassed.
Oh, I don't think you have anything to be embarrassed about. But if you Google my name, there's some stuff that I'm in the paper for as well, which I'm not happy about. But
you can get rid of that, by the way.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you can. No, and I say get rid of it. It's not about being inauthentic. It's just about creating more content that goes to that aligns with who you are now. And that happens a lot when people are transitioning, Because you don't often stay doing the same thing. As much as you may think it when you started, I thought it was going to be in fashion forever. And I still am in the style industry because it's still a part of how you show up for your how you show up for your photography, how you present yourself. I've styled clients for their biggest keynote speaking events. There's still that part of personal brand, but it's not a styling agency now. But that transition took nearly 3 years before the first 3 pages don't mention that I was a stylist. That they now mention personal branding. So it's just you need more content.
How difficult is it to let go of your identity that you're so connected with?
So hard. Oh, so hard. And I think I was maybe nearly 2 years into it, 2 years fully doing personal branding before I actually even changed it out of my bio that I was a stylist. Yeah. I sometimes stay off former celebrity stylist because it's still part of a little bit of what I do, and some organizations need help with the presentation of their team, which is part of personal brand. But it was really tough.
Do you find it's quite difficult to manage your focus? Because I know it seems like even at the very beginning of your career, you wanted to do everything. Did you find it quite difficult to really hone in?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But I think that's very much, I didn't even know what I wanted to do when I was a teenager, that I wanted to do everything. And it's a big thing now that I remember I sat down with a coach maybe 7 or 8 years ago, and he counted up how many products / services that I had. And I had 17.
I don't even want to go into mine either.
And he's like, you got to focus. And I was like, yeah, but, and he's like, no, you got to focus. And it's interesting. Today I heard on a podcast that people really don't like the word niching. Like they don't love to niche down and get this, but ultimately said another word for that is focus. And when you start focusing on 1 or 2 things, the energy goes on that and it grows. And people will come to me and go, I want to be a motivational speaker. I've had a number of different initial client calls with that. And motivational speaking is broad. And I have to say, I've got to bring you back to, you've got to be known for one thing before you can cross over and go, hey, let me talk about everything. And people go, well, I want to be the next Tony Robbins, or I want to be the next Brené Brown, but I go, but they all started with one thing. They started and got really good at one thing, and then that focus, and that for me is very much where I am now. There's many things where people have said, can you do this? Can you do this? Even from a social media perspective, I used to love still doing style videos, but it took time out. I did a load of content where I would wear style, not size, and it was great content, but it was so time consuming. And I'm like, you've got to focus. You've got to focus on what is key. My book. These kind of things that then it gives you leverage further down the line.
What do you do to focus?
I really try hard on that. Time block. Really, I block out days that I have client calls. I block out days that I work on content. I try not to take a call before 11 o'clock because I'm most productive in the morning, whereas I can be energetic all day speaking to people. But that power hours in the morning till kind of 10:30 is where my magic gets done. So whether that's editing book content, creation, ideas, I do that every morning. So time blocking is huge. And getting really clear, like I'm a goal queen now. I love goals. I love creating systems around taking goals off. I read a book called The 12-Week Year. Love that. Gave me some really great ideas on
Who's
how
that by?
to.
Do you know?
I can't actually remember, but I created my own system of that, and I'm really good when I know, okay, take it off. I created a Notion template of the 12-week year of the goals that I wanted to achieve, and I put that into operation halfway throughout the year, and by the end of it, I'd ticked off like so many of the things. So that was a great one. And then I also read recently 10x is easier than 2x by Daniel Sullivan, I think. I can share and you can have the link.
Cardone was just, that's what the one.
No, because he's 10x. It's not his. Yeah. No, it's 10x is easier than 2x. And when it comes to goal setting, that's brilliant. So when I really get into that, and then I'm like, right, this is what I'm focused on. And I love it.
How important is reading for you?
Listening. I'm an Audible girl. I very rarely read, which is really bad. I'm a book, but no, I love Audible. I think I'm 200, 300, 400. I need to actually check how many. So I'm always watching stuff on YouTube, and listening to other podcasts and listening to books. I love it.
How do you manage to have a balance in between business now and relationships and friendships?
Blocking. I think that's a big thing. I think a lot of my friends, I love meeting for walks.
So do I.
Yeah, it's a really lovely way. I've even introduced 2 slots a week where if my clients want to have a walking meeting instead of an in-person meeting on a Saturday morning, we can do that. I love it. So I combine a lot of exercise with catching up with friends or activities. I went to an event recently with a friend, and again, for things like birthdays and Christmases, we tend to buy experiences. So we catch up that way. My girlfriends, I've got 2 really good girlfriends, and we do a holiday once a year. So I do think that there's quality rather than quantity. And with regards to my husband, we schedule a date in once a week. So we always have a date time, and then once a month, one of us has to pick something that is different, like a surprise or something like that. He's been less active about that than I have. It's a work in progress. We're only married a few months, so yeah. It's scheduling. Like honestly, it's scheduled. And if it's that Saturday afternoon's usually our date, so if we don't have it, we'll make time and do it another day.
With branding right now, do you find it's more difficult to create a personal brand than ever before because of the exposure of so much social media platforms? People's focus has been a bit more diluted than ever before. Do you think it's more difficult?
No, at the moment, I would say it's potentially easier, but what is challenging is managing people's expectations. So I think, yes, you can create a brand. You don't know until you try. There's more people creating content that are over 40 and 50 now than ever. But I think the expectations of, I want to be famous. Why is that reel not got 1 million views? Why am I creating that content? People get really attached to the vanity metrics. And I think, I signed a $10,000 client off a video that had 45 views. So I think... No, I think there is very much the space, but the expectations and the intent on the consistency. So people are consistent for a month, or they're consistent for 3 months, but the intent to be consistent all year round and put systems in place for when you need your downtime or when you're traveling or when you're doing this. I think that's the challenge.
For personal branding, how consistent do you need to be?
So I think there's a couple of ways to think about it, because you've got personal brand digital presence, and then you've got personal brand in-person presence. So I don't think there's a magic number like you have to post 3 times here and 2 times here and 1 time here, because there's also how many times are you speaking on a stage. I remember a speaking coach said to me, if you want to become a top speaker, you need to be speaking a minimum of 4 times a month. And I was like, oh my God, where am I going to get, this was before social media and podcasts and all of this, where am I going to get 4 times a month? And I started to create those opportunities myself.
How did you create those opportunities?
Joined Toastmasters. So that was twice a month.
I tried to go to Toastmasters here in Dubai, right?
Yeah.
And I got the wrong room, and I ended up being in a room where there was Irish dancing on. And
perfect.
I didn't want to go. I was really dragging myself to go to Toastmasters, and when I walked into this room, they're like, "Do you want to join?" And I'm like, "Maybe."
Yeah, and I think that's the whole thing, the intent. Okay, maybe there's not the intent to go Irish dancing, but there was the intent to practice that and create my own events. People always get really put off about creating their own event. Who cares if 3 people come or 2 people come? It gives you practice, and then you can do it again next month. And people think that they need to keep creating new content, keep getting better at it, and better and better and better. So I don't think there is that one size fits all for everyone. I recently heard on LinkedIn about LinkedIn that it just crossed over 1 billion users. Only 2% are active. And what determines active is apparently only posting once a week. So in order to become more than the 2%, you just need to be posting more than once a week. So I think it depends on the platform that you're on. It also depends on, are you in the media? Because people always say, can you have a ROI of your personal brand? And I believe you can. It's not just social media, is what other opportunities are coming up for you? Are you being asked to speak? Or you being asked to go on someone's podcast? Are you being asked to contribute to this article? And people go, well, I'm just starting out, so that doesn't happen. And I think, I just started out as well, once upon a time, but I had to pick up the phone and fax machine in those days and send a fax and communicate with people. And even now, it's how are you going to connect with them? LinkedIn. Ask. If you don't ask, you don't get. It's a big thing.
So say, as an example, if I was a personal trainer, wanted to build my own personal brand, what kind of advice would you give me? What kind of platforms would I go on?
Okay, so I think from an Instagram perspective is, who are your clients? Because if your clients are maybe mums that have just had a baby, for example, maybe those kind of clients are on Facebook and part of Facebook groups. That could be where you might want to be. Or if maybe your clients are professional C-suite executives, then LinkedIn is your sweet spot, in my opinion. But it's also about finding a platform that you enjoy being on. I had one client that was like, you know what, I'm focusing on 2. I know that my clients are on this, so I'm going to go on it, but I love this platform, so I just want to create stuff for me. Great, because there is that part of doing stuff that you want to do as well. Long form content, YouTube is so overlooked in terms of if you've got an online business, if it's online, YouTube's your answer. So I think it really depends on, there's not a one size that fits all. It's about understanding what are your goals, what do you want to achieve, and then where are those clients, and starting with that. And
what's the biggest success that you've had in terms of what platform you use?
I think that they all had, like, that was that client that signed up, that had literally watched a number of videos on YouTube. And they weren't high. I've got really high performing videos on YouTube. It wasn't those she watched. She just watched these 6 that I had on personal branding. And this was 18 months ago. And then just signed up off the back of that. Had a call with me. Yep, I think you can help me. Yep, I'd like to go ahead. Brilliant. So I think there's that in proof that vanity metrics don't always work, but I think Instagram's great from a monetization perspective. Collaborations, they don't always have to be a financial reward. Opportunities, it's your shop window. LinkedIn, ton of corporate opportunities come out of that. So I wouldn't necessarily say I think there's been just one. I would say they all have their own space, and I slightly alter the content for that as well.
What has been the most difficult moment in your career?
It probably goes back to what we were kind of we talked about at the start, was going through a divorce and feeling like I had to start all over again. And that kind of really coincided was, I've been styling for 15 years. Do I want to keep doing this? Like, what does my next chapter look like? Okay, in some ways it was exciting, but in other ways it was really daunting, because you're like, okay, hang on a minute, I'm 37 years old and I'm starting again from scratch. Not quite from scratch, but what am I going to do? How am I going to get new clients? I want to pivot into this sort of industry, personal branding. I could see people were asking me to help them with more than just styling. They were entrepreneurs. There were people like me that I wanted to help, but it was so daunting that at the time I'm thinking, can I even do this? The crisis calls that my mum used to get, I don't think I could do this anymore. And I think it's that having that support network around, friends, I needed to find somewhere new to live, everything's uprooted. When you're an entrepreneur, everything's uprooted that's personal. It affects every aspect of what you're doing. And that was really tough because I didn't feel at home. I worked from home. All of these things, what does home look like? But you turn it round, and as hard as it was like, this is your chance. What do you want to do? And I was like, right, okay. First of all, where do I want to live? And I remember thinking at the time, pick somewhere that if you could pick anywhere, where would you pick? And I remember thinking, do you know what? I'd love to live in a hotel. If this is my fresh start, I would love to live in a hotel. How can I make that happen? And within 8 weeks, I made it happen. And then it was like, right, okay, this is your business. How do you want to make this happen? Okay, I want to be doing this. I want to be moving more into the online space. How do I do that? Okay, let's look back and then reflection. Okay, let's start offering this. Let's get comfortable with doing webinars. The very first time I did a webinar, like 100 people showed up all online. Like I mean, we're talking 2017, 18. Now people do them all the time. Maybe even 2016. 100 people were online listening to me. I was so nervous. So I think that transition pushed me out of my comfort zone so much, but I'm very grateful for it.
Is there anything that you do to help manage your nerves?
Yes. What do you mean, before I go on stage?
Yeah.
I created a playlist. So before my very biggest live speaking event, I created a playlist and listened to it before I went on stage. And it was all songs that just made me feel so good. And I put my headphones in and I just had a couple of minutes of listening to this and then went on stage and loved it.
Is there any times where your nerves get the better of you and you don't perform?
I wouldn't say so, because I don't know if other people would know if I had been affected, and I'm trying to think if ever that's happened. But I would say I just always show up the best I possibly can, and for me that starts at the night before, to be honest. I'm an early bedder. I'm in my bed for 9 and I'm up early and I go to the gym, and that really sets my day up so that when I'm going into something in a really energetic space, and I'm here to serve and I'm here to inspire and I'm here to do that. So I would say not so much, and if it is, it's not deliberate.
What makes an entrepreneur successful?
Consistency. That is so boring and it's such a cliche answer, but people give up way too early. They're like, that service didn't work. How long have you been trying it? 4 weeks? Is that it? You know, I think they do give up. I do think you need to have the flexibility to be able to pivot, because often what we start doing, we're like, oh, actually, that's where maybe I see more of a market, or I've been asked to do more of that. So absolutely pivot, but I do think people give up too early.
What kind of advice would you give your old self?
My old self.
When you were in your 20s?
In my 20s,
your young self, I should say.
Yeah, I was going to say, how young we're going to go.
I still think you're young, but...
my 20-year-old Kelly. Well, I think 20-year-old Kelly was still very much about... There was loads of ambition then. I think probably one thing would have been, don't worry about... You don't need to hurry up and get married. You don't need to... There's no set... Like, I think there was a big thing by your 30... You've got to be married and you don't want to be left on the shelf. That was me. And
what do you think created that for you?
I think maybe friends, maybe around, everyone I knew around me was kind of maybe getting married or was married. You know, my parents married young. You know, maybe there was all of that. But I do think there was. Now I go, oh, no. But I think there was that big thing. So I was so happy that, you know, I was engaged by the time I was 29 or 30. Before I was 30. And that's so stupid. Whereas, you know, if I'd waited another 2 years, then it could have been a very different story.
So because this is called the Detached Podcast, I like to ask the traditional question of what would you detach yourself away from that's limiting you today?
I thought about this, and I would say overcommitment. And it's really something that I'm working on a lot. So I overcommit to say yes to a lot of things. And I tend to do it, you know, oh yeah, I can do that. Or my husband's noticed it. The day before I travel, I always go, I'm not booking anything in. And then, you know, he's all relaxed and all sorted. And then he's like, why have you got 10 meetings booked in the day before? Well, I just needed to get that in and I needed to do this. And yes, I say yes. So my mantra for 2025, if it's not a hell yeah, it's a no.
I always use this. If it's not a hell yeah, it's a hell no.
Yeah.
But I use this when it comes to friendship, lots of friendship decisions, relationship decisions, business decisions. I think it's really important to not blur the lines too much.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So the lack to stop overcommitting, so that then I can also, everything's work in progress. Keep focusing on what's important.
So what's next for Kelly?
What's
Big
next?
goals.
Big goals. So podcast for me is big. We were chatting about it before, so that is going bigger. Different guests, different opportunities coming out of that, and I really want to focus on that, because last year was very much wedding, book, rebrand, like I had loads on. So I feel that podcast and speaking events. So I've got I'm hosting my own big speaking event in January, and we're looking to have over 150 people at it. So I'm starting boldly, I would like to say. Personal brand retreat is something that I've wanted to do, and it's been on there. So that's looking like that's going to come off. I've got a speaking event in May. So there's more of that. I want to serve more people. And how can I do that? How can I inspire more people to action, to show up unapologetically themselves? For me, it's by speaking. Podcasts, events, hosting my own events, creating content. That's the goal.
Thank you so much for today's conversation. You've been great.
Thank you.